Hey everyone, this is Elenbaas from Nightlight Astrology. Today we are going to take a look at the sequence of events that is taking place this week. That is the solar eclipse in the sign of Aries, followed immediately by Neptune's entrance into Aries. We're going to put these two things side by side and give you 5 things to watch for. Any of these things will be applicable for the archetypal combinations of the solar eclipse in Aries and Neptune entering Aries, but they may also give you some tips and clues as to what you can expect in the months ahead as Neptune continues its ingress into the early degrees of this sign for the first time, and as the solar eclipse window plays out. This is the case because when outer planets enter new signs, it often takes a while to really notice or observe their effects. And solar eclipse also tend to play out over the next several moon cycles to come, if not sometimes for a better part of the remainder of the year that we're in. So in this case, these have some long-term effects that I think you will be able to notice and observe beyond just the transits of the week. So I hope you'll find these themes to be interesting and useful today. Before we get into it, as always, remember to like and subscribe. It really helps our channel to grow. We're seeing what we can do to get to 80,000 subscribers. I'm recording this early, so I don't know how close we are right now, but I know that the time I'm recording this, have made some really great progress over the past month. So thank you to everybody who's helped grow our channel by liking and subscribing. It's free to do so, obviously, and it's just a way that you can help us grow our work. You can find transcripts of any of these daily talks on the website, which is nightlightastrology.com. One promotion today, that is the upcoming webinars. If you go to the events page, click on live talks, you will see that on April 3rd, I have some travel in March and April. And so my webinars typically come in the middle of the month. They're early in these 2 months, but on the 3rd, you can hear a talk on essential dignities, what they are, how they work, why they're real, what they're used for, and also why you don't have to be afraid of them or think that they're shallow or prescriptive, which are things that many modern astrologers unfortunately tend to think about essential dignities. So when we say a planet's in its detriment, its exile, its fall, its rulership, its exaltation, what does that mean? What are they used for? How did these categories come about in the first place? Once you know these things, you have a powerful part of the language that can unlock your ability to understand transits, to read charts. So I hope that this will be enlightening for you when you sign up. Of course, if you can't attend live, you get the recording later. Also, pretty soon we will be opening enrollment for the next year 1 program that begins in June. So stay tuned for more on that. I'll have a video tagged on to the end of daily videos. You can learn more about the first year course. That'll be coming up pretty soon now. All right, on that note, let's shift our attention over to the real-time clock and take a look at this sequence of events that is arguably one of the most powerful couple of days in 2025. So here we sit on Tuesday, March 25th, and I'm going to speed this up just a touch. And we're going to go to Saturday, March 29th. It's good to get ahead of this one since it's a very big event. We can see the solar eclipse. It's an out of sign solar eclipse. It's a partial solar eclipse. It's not the world's strongest, but it is with an exalted sun. And the North Node's out of sign in Pisces. So when that happens, I think it's still very appropriate to read the location of the eclipse itself. You could combine the location of the North Node and Pisces in your chart as well and kind of blend the two, but I tend to focus on the sign of the eclipse itself, which in this case would be the sign of Aries. What makes this very, very potent is the fact that the very next day, if we go forward just a day, you'll see that Neptune enters Aries while the moon is still separating. So you got this new moon in Aries followed by Neptune's first ingress into the sign of Aries. Now, to give you a sense of how long Neptune has been in this sign, you go all the way back to 2011 when it made its ingress into Pisces. So we're talking about a period of like 14 years. And we have not had Neptune out of the sign of Pisces for a very long time. So it's easy to fall asleep in the midst of a long outer planetary transit and just get used to the psychic atmosphere as it is expressed by, Neptune in Pisces. We're going to have a very distinct sense of the changing of an era with the movement of this outer planet, as well as the recent ingress of Pluto into Aquarius, as well as Saturn moving into Aries by the end of May, as well as Jupiter moving into Cancer in June, as well as Uranus moving into Gemini by the early part of July. So it is a year where all of the major slow-moving planets are changing signs. It's the middle of the decade. You really do get the feeling that you're entering into a new era. What is an era? It's really kind of like a chapter change in the timelines that we're living. And you may notice this in multiple timelines in multiple areas of your life. But that's the first thing to say. Now, what I want to do, we're going to cover this from multiple angles, but what I want to talk about are the 5 things that you can watch for given the combination of the solar eclipse followed by Neptune entering Aries back to back. These are things that you could also track over at least the next 2, 3, 4 moon cycles, because eclipses take a while to play out. Especially an eclipse in the sign of Aries, which tends to be very inceptional. I'll say more about that in a moment. The things that are starting right now will have a long time to play out. This is also the case because Neptune and Saturn are both entering Aries on the heels of eclipse seasons that we've had in Aries, which means that this Aryan period is spreading out through time quite a bit. So any of these 5 things to watch for would be appropriate for this year and next year, as Saturn and Neptune dance together in the early degrees and finish moving back into Pisces and then into Aries to stay. They would be appropriate over the next couple of moon cycles as the eclipse energy kind of washes through. It's like a tidal system that's coming through. So all of that being said, let's start on number 1. I use this example when looking at I think it was horoscopes maybe for the month of March with Alex and Dana. I said when I had, there was a few ayahuasca ceremonies that I had. They weren't my very first ones. It was maybe like 20 ceremonies in after a couple of years of starting to work with ayahuasca. And I use this example just to communicate the theme, which you could experience in many different ways. Those experiences for me were so terrifying. They were easily the most terrifying, difficult, dark experiences of my entire life. And yet they were powerfully transformative. They were so overwhelming. I remember when I woke up in the morning after the first of several in a row that were excruciatingly difficult. And I remember going, well, my life will never, ever be the same again. I don't know what is going to happen from this moment forward, but I am not in the same life anymore. And the reason for that was that I wouldn't call it trauma, but the darkness, I had seen something and experienced something that I had no way of comprehending the existence of. It was beyond the scope of what I could have even imagined. And so that kind of experience happens when we lose people, or when we have radically life-altering events take place, when we maybe visit a different part of the world for the first time and have our eyes open to some completely different way of life. There are certain kinds of paradigm-shifting moments where when you come out the other side of an event or an experience or a shift internally, you go, wow, I'm never going to be the same again after that. It's very overwhelming, and at the same time, it is marked by a feeling of being in a distinctly new phase of life. I'll never forget. Last year we had to put our dog down because she was dying. We had a death doula come, and it was really sweet. It was like a beautiful little ceremony we had. And it was the first time I had ever gone through something like that, right? And it was similar on a very small level, where I was like, I'm just different now. And I feel very overwhelmed, and I don't understand how this experience of death will impact me, but I know it will, and I know I'm a different person today. So it could be anything. It doesn't have to be an epic psychedelic experience. It could just be a simple event, but it has that feeling of overwhelming everything you thought you were, or everything you thought you knew, or everything you thought was happening. And it simultaneously makes you feel as though you are launching immediately into a new phase of life. There may not be a clear sense of where it's going or what exactly you have to do, but the feeling of newness permeates an overwhelming shift, like a sea change that happens, followed by the feeling that you're in new territory. This is one way of looking at the signature of a solar eclipse and Neptune entering Aries at the same time. That there is a door that's being opened in the most inceptional starting point of the zodiac, the place in the zodiacal story from the symbolic orientation of the northern hemisphere where light takes over from darkness and there's a fresh breath of air that is spring and it's a new life. But when Neptune comes in, it can also be disorienting. It can be marked by things that are so overwhelming that they launch you into that new phase or era and you just go, didn't see that coming. Now, there is a little bit more of a shock and awe to Aries because Aries is a Mars-ruled sign that tips the scales of light from darkness into light. And that moment where yang takes over from yin can often be, like like someone who has to jump start their motorcycle or something. They kind of jump and they kick it into gear and all of a sudden it flares up, and that initial burst into zero Aries can be so loud and distinct. And when Neptune enters that space, also overwhelming and a little disorienting, but also you can tell I'm in a new phase. So that's what I would watch for as an energetic signature that's not only here coming up this weekend, but that will spread out in time over the next year to come. We're really in a space where we may feel a little stuck or uncertain as to what's happening, also because of the combination of Saturn and Neptune coming together. But I'll say more about that, and I'll save those thoughts until we get closer to the end of May when Saturn enters Aries. Number 2 would be that this sign of Aries, as well as Neptune and a solar eclipse in Aries, all point toward the energies of inspiration. If you think of the word in, you kind of imagine something that's happening internally. And if you think of the word spirit, that's in inspiration, then you think of an inward ignition of spirit. And that is life force energy. That is a sense of direction, a sense of purpose, a sense of calling, a sense of passion. Enthusiasm comes with the word entheos, which means the God within. It's like the daimon, or that spirit that guides us and leads us and directs us and calls us and challenges us to take on something new, or to go in a new direction, or to shift course, or to reprioritize, or to flip the script on our lives. Aries, as transits come through Aries, there is this burst of charisma that comes with an impulsive quality. Act now, decisively, do something. And also with Neptune, the sense of a vision or a transcendental sense of calling or purpose that ignites enthusiasm, that feels like we're being lit up by something bigger than ourselves that's also clarifying itself and announcing itself within us. So all of these qualities make an Aries eclipse followed by Neptune into Aries very action-oriented and filled with visions or callings or dreams and ambitions in a very overwhelming and powerful manner. Now, that doesn't mean that all of them will last, or that the initial ideas and actions will be the ones that we end up with, but you got to start somewhere. And sometimes it's a process of just starting to work with that energy until you find the right thing, or starting something only to have it lead to something else that's completely unexpected. But either way, following and listening to these impulses, these fiery, charismatic voices within, the visionary quality of Neptune as well is very important right now, and will continue to impress itself upon our psyches in the months to come. Number 3 would be the themes of action, courage, conflict, and heroism. These are just straight up Aries themes, the sign that is the masculine domicile of Mars and the exaltation of the sun. Mars and the sun together represent things like action, ambition, as well as the almost like a promise that whatever you are going to take action for or toward, you will need a degree of heroism, courage, self-determination, self-belief. You will have to rise up somehow. You'll have to face your own fears or your own inhibitions or your lack of self-worth. there's a way in which these transits imply that you need to tap into something. And I'll say more about that in a second. But even just noticing that these qualities imply that there will be a certain kind of heroic mission or quest that will grab you. That's important because you want to make sure it's the right one. You want to make sure it's a virtuous one, that it's one that will be worth the price, of admission. It's like, what story do I want to live? Let's be thoughtful about it, even if one of the stories, no matter which one we choose, is going to call us to action and require a degree of courage and maybe even facing certain kinds of conflicts. Number 4 will be individuation through exploration or pioneering. When these kinds of events happen in Aries, we have a long period of Aries ingresses coming up with both Saturn and Neptune. It is as though the call for each of us is to individuate. This is a sign on a psychological and archetypal level, again, mostly due to the rulerships of Mars and the Sun, that has to do with it's like we come into this life, and some of what we come into this life with on the level of character and dharma is known to us. And we live always in touch with a certain amount of who and what we are, just because we can't help it. We can't be anything other than who we are. And then there are parts of life, stories within the life, where we discover parts of who we are and then have to make sure we integrate and remain loyal to them, because we've discovered, oh, this is also a part of who I am. I didn't know it. I couldn't see it. I hadn't tapped into it, whatever the case might be. But now that I do know, I have to be loyal to this and have the courage to integrate it despite what other people might think or despite how uncomfortable it might be. This is me, and I can't live without me. Dharma, which is a good way, a parallel way of thinking about the sign of Aries. When we think about the idea of that which without which you cannot be yourself. I was talking about this for Aries rising horoscopes at the beginning of the month. Well, fire can't be fire without being heat and light, something like that. So these parts of you are also things without which you can't be you. Some of those and you have to stay loyal to. Some of those but you don't stay loyal to, and that can become problematic. And Aries transits can bring out the problems that develop when we aren't living with some authentic part of our own nature and character. And then the unknown parts of us that we can't find through anything other than a degree of risk-taking, exploration, or pioneering. What are you going to start? What are you going to do? What are you going to follow? What action or impulse are you going to take that leads to uncovering more of who you are that you didn't know was there? This is what is meant by individuation through exploration or pioneering. And this is a theme that will play out not in one day, but over the course of the next years with Neptune and Aries in some part of your chart. It will happen through the topics of the house it occupies, which is part of our horoscopic exploration for the month of March as well. Finally, the shadows of these transits can be machismo, bravado, selfishness, arrogance, a tendency to be domineering or need to win at all costs. The shadows of Sun and Mars are self-centeredness, or conflict orientation or domination, or only thinking that your self-worth comes through how many things you've won or how many battles you've fought or how many, stripes you've gotten from how many heroic deeds you've done, like that. The temptation to tilt into a kind of muscular bravado, psychically or physically, is there with these transits. To put yourself above everything else, to put winning some noble or righteous cause above everything else. So fanatical, almost like delusional, fanatical, idealistic senses of what you want to fight for and win. Those things can become very overwhelming. And it's amazing how many instances there are throughout history of people who end up resembling the thing that they oppose because of how self-righteous they get in fighting what they oppose. And that's something we have to be very careful of with these the potential for the heroic delusions of grandeur that Neptune into Aries does bring. I mentioned some of these things as we've explored Neptune and Aries in the past, but these are some of the shadows to watch for. So on this note, I think we have some good themes to keep in mind for us with the Aries eclipse followed by Neptune entering Aries. I hope that this has been a useful and positive exploration of these energetic archetypal signatures. And on that note, I will leave you for the day. Be sure to check out on the website the upcoming event that I have on essential dignities. If you don't know about that language and you want to know why things are called exalted or in their rulership or where all of that comes from and how it works so you can understand it, and it's not just a list that makes it sound like if you've got a planet in this sign you're screwed. It's so much more than that. So if you want to learn more about that, check out the webinars on the website nightlightastrology.com. Hope to see some of you there, and we will see you again tomorrow. Bye everyone.